Hello, everyone. How are we doing today?
Good, how are you, Professor?
I'm doing good, hanging in there. Ready for my nap, though, I think.
Yeah, it's the best time to take a nap.
You're never too old to take a nap. There was a guy, I can't remember who he was, back in the 90s or late 80s, early 90s. He said, everything I need to know to be successful, I learned in kindergarten, which was kind of funny. So he goes through and says he learns how to share, he learned how to take a nap, all this other good stuff. All the lessons for life to get along with one another. What are my thoughts on boba, huh, Avi? I've had it a few times. Has a lot of sugar in it, so I don't generally drink it. I drink mostly tea or a diet soda or water.
Do you take caffeine daily?
Not anymore. I used to, but I kind of cut back on that. So most of the teas that I drink are all herbal teas.
Yeah, I've been drinking a lot of boba lately. I feel kind of strung out.
Yeah, there can be a lot of caffeine in some of those drinks. Have some. What is that one drink? I forget what the name of it is. But it has like 3 times the caffeine as a regular soda. Mountain Dew. Have some Mountain Dew. That'll get you nice and amped up.
Hey, if you want some really good caffeine, drink that Vietnamese coffee.
Oh yeah.
Man, that's like drinking like 8 cups of Folgers and like a little shot.
My son belongs to the Coffee of the Month club, so we get like a couple of bags of coffee every month, and he's always trying to get me to try some weird coffees. I'm not a big coffee drinker, so. All right. So we got Josh here yet?
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
How you doing, Josh?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. There you are. I will make you co-host.
Sounds good.
You can take over for me anytime you want.
All right.
So my other class is at 9 o'clock in the morning. So then I work my job all day, and then I do this in the afternoon, and I get done just in time for quitting time. But I end up actually working another hour or two. That's a bad thing of working from home. You end up working more than you would at the office.
I would definitely take working at home at this point in my life, man.
Yeah. I do like it because I don't have to do that hour and a half commute to Riverside, which is nice. And if I was teaching at 9 a.m. and working from home and then teaching at 3:30 on campus, that would be horrible because I would have no place to go for 4 or 5 hours. So
Yeah, that's true. I got put on shit detail for UPS, so I'm on a tarmac for 9 hours in the middle of the morning. And the schedule is killing me, especially with a 2-year-old. I don't have a second to even think right now.
yeah, probably not sleeping very well through the night either, are you?
No, they just changed it up. We had 2 people get injured off of air ramps. So when we were pulling up to planes. So about
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, they switched my whole schedule around because there's only a few of us that have security clearance to go on March Air Force Base
Mm-hmm.
in planes. So it has been cold. It has been rainy. It has been just
And those are dangerous conditions too.
yeah. Last 2 weeks have been like a blur right now. So I'm very on.
Yeah, my son was stationed on an aircraft carrier. He was a communications specialist, and when he was on the aircraft carrier, there was about 6 deaths because of the airline or the airplanes. So one guy got blown completely over the off of the ship, and the ship ran him over. Another
Oh,
guy,
geez.
yeah, another guy walked right into an engine.
Damn.
So
Well, no, these we had a couple kids that are military base background, and they weren't paying attention to where the air ramp was,
mhm.
and they walked straight off the air ramp. So took about a 15-foot dive.
Yeah, that's very dangerous, especially if you're not paying attention. That's what happens. A lot of that is caused by human error and mistakes. All
Yeah.
right, what time is it? 3:34. We got a few more minutes. Looks like almost everybody's here. Do I have any questions, concerns? Somebody want to add to our conversation? What's going on?
I mean, I say we just put it around the horn. Does anybody have any comments about how they're handling with the COVID issues? Has anybody seen any family members?
That Carlos is your schoolmate. His mother passed away on Monday night. So he's, if you guys want to send him some words of encouragement or condolences or even a prayer, I'll put his email up for you. I'll make an announcement. You guys can email him and
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry to
give
hear
him
that.
some support. Yeah, he lost his father a few years ago, and now his mother, and he's your guys' age, and he's all alone.
Well, put his email in the chat box, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that can reach out to him.
Yeah, I will do that later. I'll do that when we're finished up. I have to go get it. All right, so let's get started. If there's no questions, concerns. All right. So we're in the second part of week 4. We're going to do a little quick review, and then we're going to talk about chapter 6. Your book talks about Cisco and how Cisco acquired several hundred companies and did it very, very successfully. And that's what we're going to talk about is acquisitions, mergers, and how they did that. So a little review, all these lovely things that we've learned about so far, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and today in 6. So we talked about the stakeholders, internal analysis, external analysis. And then we talked about substitute products, competition, Nokia. We watched that. I don't think that video worked very well, did it? General environment, how companies compete, how they don't compete, how Nokia messed up and didn't stay with the times. It didn't jump on the Android bandwagon with everybody else, or make a software that's kind of compatible or comparable, competitive. Okay, so we talked about VRIO, the rarity, complexity, advantage, capabilities. Remember we said, yes, all 4 of them, you would have sustained competitive advantage, but not necessarily need all 4 of them for a competitive advantage like we talked about in Cobra Beer. Cost advantage, we talked about that in chapter 4, and differentiation advantage, we just spoke about that in chapter 5 on Monday. And yes, creating differentiation in the marketplace, value chain, yes, the whole thing, who, what, where, why, when, where, how, and all those good things. So another look at the value chain for you. And then we talked about Cobra Beer, the VRIO on the Cobra Beer, and the Pastel. So kind of know what those things are. I already gave you a hint that that might be one of your questions. And Pastel, political, economic, social, technology, environmental, and legal. Okay, so how do those apply to Cobra Beer? How do those apply to most companies? Whether it's in your general area, in your country, or if you're going out of the country. And yes, just a value chain just to emphasize how much that is important. All right. So questions about anything on chapters 1 through 6? So everybody knows everything and they're ready for the midterm, right? All right, so that was the answers to the midterm. There you go. All right, so strategizing chapter 6, corporate versus business strategy, strategizing, corporate strategy, business strategy, how they're different. And we're going to concentrate on what corporations do and how they do takeovers and mergers and all that other kind of good stuff. Okay, so what businesses or business should we be in is a question that many corporations ask. For example, Xerox, when they started losing business because of shrinkage on the copier business, they got into all kinds of different other types of businesses. How does the parent company add value to the subsidiaries? GE owns many, many different subsidiaries. They give them value by giving them capital, by giving them personnel who know what to do, and by generally giving them experience. So that's another reason, another example of how it does. How does being in one business help us compete in other businesses? So if you're in a construction type business, you go into plumbing or you go into electrical, something along the adjacent lines when you're building houses, that gives you experience and it helps you in that type of business. Okay, the business strategy, how should we compete? That kind of only relies to one type of company. The search for a competitive advantage within a single industry, market or line of business. Corporate strategy is the search for value and competitive advantage through participation in several different industries and markets. So the main difference between business strategy and corporate strategy is, for example, Southwest Airline versus Alaska. Southwest doesn't have a bunch of subsidiaries. They don't have a bunch of other companies. Unilever versus Nestle. They have many, many different companies, and they seem to always compete, whether it's the food industry, bottled water, clothing industry, or household goods. As you can see, Unilever companies, these are the many different companies, and the Nestle company. And what you'll see in a lot of these conglomerations, these big corporations that own many, many companies, you will see them have the same type of products, and that's not by coincidence. That is actually by design. So, and you also see that they mostly focus on the basic necessities to life, food, shelter, clothing, household goods, what they need to survive basically and to live. So that's not a coincidence and that's not by chance. That's actually by design. So, and then we're going to talk about vertical integration is one way that big corporations like to integrate other companies into the fold. So for example, backward integration is going to get raw materials, like what Tesla does with the batteries, how they mine the raw materials. They either own a company or invest in a company that has intermediate goods. For example, if you're making a refrigerator, you would own a company that makes ice makers, or that does Freon or something of that nature, or makes the coils. So that was backwards integration type thing in the manufacturing. And then forward integration, for example, Sears, even though their stores are not in business, they have subsidiaries where the service industry, where they're still fixing a lot of the equipment. So not only do they manufacture it, they sell it, and they still service it. So they still do marketing and sales, not under the Sears name, but under other brands, and after sales service. So they still do the service on the washer, dryer, refrigerators, and appliances. A balanced integration is where you go on both sides, not too far. You want to stay towards the middle of manufacturing. You don't want to get too distracted or too far into the chain. So the Tesla value chain, as you can see, Tesla does almost everything. Even the design, they doesn't show here that they do the design, but a lot of the design is done in-house by Tesla. And a lot of the the sourcing of the raw materials, the leather, the steering wheel, and all of those other things too. Okay, so rethink business models, sales, the cell emission credits, everything from the gigafactory onto doing the battery supply, building a solar power gigafactory capable of today's world capacity. So not only that, but Tesla is into solar panels. So not only do they sell them, but they use them in their own factories. Okay, everything from the 90-second battery swap. Okay, questions about this so far? Well, good. So vertical integration, the pros and cons of vertical integration. So no reliance on suppliers. So if you're making everything, it's all in-house. You have control over it completely, 100%. Potential access to monopolized suppliers. So if you have a contract, which are the terms and conditions of buying and selling a certain product, you can actually be their only customer and you can monopolize them. Economies of scale, once you build a big enough factory and plant, you can build the economies of scale. So knocking off most popular brand names and products so you can kind of monopolize that and squash the competition. And then you can also lower the cost, which is very, very expensive to do. But once you get to that point, you can lower the cost and have a great economies of scale and lower price. Some of the cons, it's very expensive, more expensive than outsourcing like Nike does or some of these other companies. So if you're producing everything in-house, it's going to be very, very expensive. Reduces flexibility. So like Nike, when one cost gets high on manufacturing a product, they can go to a different plant. They have the flexibility to do that. If you, for example, our ceramics company, so they don't have, the parent company doesn't have flexibility of going out and buying new ceramic parts for their jet engines. They have to buy it from them. So it reduces the flexibility. So if that company goes out of business, then they're, then they're going to have to find another source. It may be good, it may be bad. They don't know. But that is one of the advantages of owning your own company that makes parts for your other products. Okay, so loss of focus. For example, GE at one time had so many businesses that they really didn't concentrate on anything. They just started opening up a bunch of businesses, hoping they would make money. A lot of them didn't, so they had to close a lot of them. Not likely to have a culture that supports both retail stores and factories, which is a very, very big problem. The culture is a lot different between a salesperson and an assembly line worker. You are not going to have the same culture. You're not going to have the same type of management. It's going to be a lot different, and a lot of times it doesn't work very well. So you have to compartmentalize on a lot of that stuff. Okay. So supply chain is a network of all individual organization resources, activities, technology involved in the creation and sale of a product, from the delivery of source materials from supplier to manufacturer. So the supply chain, not to be confused with the other chain, which is
Value chain.
value chain. Very good. All right. So the supply chain is everything from raw materials to the service and the finished goods afterwards. All right. So for example, on a laptop, most laptop companies are not going to drill for crude oil and turn it into plastic, right? So many companies, and especially in my industry, the plastic granules, once they'll buy the plastic granules and they'll do the injection molding into parts. So many companies in my industry, especially in the laptop industry, do that to make everything from keyboards to the cases to other plastic parts. So they will do that on their own, and that will be part of their value chain. And then the keyboards, and then eventually the finished product is a laptop. So that is your backwards value chain. And then sometimes a laptop like Dell will sell directly to the end customer, right? To the end user. And they also sell in wholesale. I can go to my wholesaler, Ingram Micro, and buy Dell products. And then also they'll do it in retail and computer stores. So for example, Dell does almost this whole value chain except for a drill for oil. And who knows, they might even have a stake in one of these companies that does that in oil exploration. Okay. So diversification, we're going to talk about that. So once a firm decides to diversify their operations, the next question is, how are they going to diversify? So there's 3 different types of diversification that a large corporation can do. In a conglomerate, greenfield entry into an adjacent market by its owner and operator. So basically, they're going to open up their own store. They're going to start from scratch. They're going to decide how they're going to do it and where they're going to do it and all that other good stuff. So they're going to start completely from new. Acquisition, the purchase of another company and its assets. So an acquisition would be a company that's already in that industry that either has success or maybe not so much success, but has potential. And then a joint venture. A joint venture is something that Google and NASA did. So it is a business arrangement which usually creates a whole new company in most cases, some cases not. But in most cases, it'll create a whole new company and it'll have a whole new culture. The people will be coming over from different departments, and they're going to pool their resources, and they're going to have all kinds of contracts of who gets what and how much money each one earns. Okay, so diversification is an act of an existing entity branching out into a new business opportunity or just expanding its existing operations. And the reason companies do this is for business growth and operations, to ensure maximized utility of the existing resources and capabilities, and to escape unattractive industry environments. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So different types of diversification is horizontal, vertical, concentric, and conglomerate. And we will explain those. Okay, so limited diversification is like, that would probably be similar to what Southwest does and some of these other airlines by taking on packages and delivering them and charging FedEx, UPS, or whoever logistics company that does that. But 95% of their revenue still comes from flying passengers around. So a dominant business is in between 70 and 95% of the revenues from a single business unit. So maybe they would do some concessions type things or other things like that where they would earn 30% of their revenue. But their still dominant business is still flying people around. Okay, so related diversification, revenues from dominant business. All business are share products, technical. This stuff you really don't need to commit to memory. So don't pay too much attention to this. This won't be on your final. Okay. But it is in the book, so it's important somewhat. So single business, which we just talked about, and dominant vertical business. And then dominant business and adjacent business. These are the definitions. So value through diversification. So what value do these companies get? They're able to expand their customer base. They can use the other company's customers to sell to their service. For example, when I bought a company, I wanted the customer base. I didn't really care about too much of what that company sold because I sold many of the same things. A few companies I did and others I didn't. I'll talk about that in a bit. Better service existing customers through more better products, which was one of the things that I was more concerned about, is getting different products, and create economies of scope or increase scale, broaden existing production capacity. So a lot of times, like for example, if you're doing ceramic knives for your ceramic project, Caracera is selling a lot more knives than they're capable of manufacturing. So as a company, you're going to help them out and mold knives for them and make knives so they can sell them. So that would be an example of broadening existing production capacity. Adopt new technology platforms. A lot of times, Xerox and some of these other tech companies, HP, will buy companies just for their technology. That's what Cisco was known for, is buying these technologies just for buying these companies just for their technology and integrating it into what they currently do. Gain new product knowledge, add new brands, identify new trends, and earlier. So add new brands, that's Unilever and Nestle. That's mainly why they buy up companies or merge with companies or create new companies, is to add new brands and new products. All right, and this is in your book. So, okay, so exploiting or expanding the resources and capabilities come through one of 8 mechanisms. So these 8, not just one of these, but sometimes the company will use several of these in order to gain a competitive advantage, and which is employing Slack, synergy, shared knowledge, like we talked about how Honda does that, similar models of success, spreading human and financial capital, like GE does. They'll send actual human capital. They will send a person who is very skilled at either finance or some other thing, and they'll bring them to a company and they'll give them financial capital and they'll grow that company. Providing a stepping stone for the company, stopping or slowing competitors, and staying with technological changes. So, for example, the Slack, we just talked about the airlines, how Delta Airlines generated almost 37 billion, and a billion of that came from carrying cargo and freight for other logistics companies. So when they say, hey, we're going to charge you $75 for that extra bag that you want to bring on board, that's the money they would be losing if the space they could use to move cargo. So the top half of the aircraft was people, and the bottom half is luggage and freight. So that's an example of Slack. Synergy is action between 2 different elements of a system that creates more value together than the elements create separately. So for example, when we talk about Star Wars, all the franchises that they have out there, but the theme park also uses the theme park built the Star Wars world. So the 2 together create more value than they would separately on their own. Okay, and then shared knowledge. GE builds both washer and dryers and stovetop ovens. So what happens is they have the raw materials, the steel that they create and make and bend, and they have their intermediate goods, which they have the motors, which are very similar in most of their appliance products, and they have the shared knowledge of building these things. So they get the managed skill and they get the economies of scope, and they can deliver those together, and those are actually more effective together than they are separately. So core competencies, like we talked about in Honda, how Honda has 100 years of making engines, and those engines go in automobiles, lawnmowers, consumer generator, boats, motorcycles, snowmobiles, other things that use engines, and they've even made very, very small engines. So that is the core competencies or shared knowledge collectively that Honda has learned how to do over 100 years. Okay, so spreading capital. Some companies create value through diversification by acting as an internal capital market. They create value across business units by moving funds, talent, which are people, and knowledge from unit to unit. So taking the manufacturing business, for example, making washers and dryers. So GE knows how to spread that capital over making other types of things with assembly lines and other things, and they can spread the capital and actually finance those companies and use that money to create a bigger market share. All right, so these are the largest conglomerates that we have in the United States and in the world. Tata, Honeywell, GE, Unilever, Raytheon, and 3M. I didn't know 3M is the number 1. Who knew? Oh, I was going to do a poll, but I forgot. So tell me, what does 3M stand for? Extra special bonus points for whoever answers first. No, not Michigan something. No. Number 1 is mining. Okay, who Googled it already? Go ahead, put it in there. No. Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. I think that's what it stands for, right? Did you Google that? Google, there you go. All right. So it has absolutely nothing to do with what the majority of their business is today. But when they first started out, that was what they did. They did mining. They mined gold and turned it into raw material, into products. Cool. You guys can bag on Google all you want. Go ahead. All right. All right, let's get back to business here. All right. So stepping stone new industry, the stepping stone mechanism explicitly works to enhance capabilities. Executives may survey the landscape of the industry and its future trends and decide that their competitive position will not be sustainable. So the stepping stone is like a lot of these companies say, hey, we're going to branch out into these other industries, and they can't really do it, or don't want to do it, or can't justify doing it. So a lot of the times they cannot shift the firm's position through diversification, and a lot of times they can, and many times it doesn't work so well. All right, so any questions so far? Yes, no, maybe. Is everybody awake? Do I need to check the camera? Okay, so dominant logic is conceptualizing of a business or set of rules for competition that applies to seemingly unrelated product markets or industry. For example, General Electric does airplane engines, financing, and light bulbs. I mean, do any of those things have in common? Not really. All right, so many reasons why diversification pitfalls is hubris is a Greek word for excessive pride. So many managers have this pride where they have this gut feeling that they should diversify into a certain industry without doing the proper research. And a lot of the times they fail. And we're talking about these large, big corporate companies that have tons of money. Not so much, within the last decade, this has not been the way to go with all the information, the data, and at our fingertips, and a lot of the other information that we can gather in these industries. So this has not so much taken over like it once did, but it's still out there.
Hey, Professor, I just wanted to touch on the comment that you made. I got
Sure.
a lot of family that live up in Canada, up in Nova Scotia.
No way.
Yeah, way. No, and I remember that you made a little joke about Josso, but he brought up a good point. And I'm not gonna lie, he brought up a good point with Target's integration into Canada. So like Tim Hortons is the major coffee area up there. So like they pass out hockey cards, and you know how big hockey is in Canada,
Yeah.
of course, right? So Target decided to implant the Starbucks into their area. They didn't do the proper research. They didn't have the right personnel. So I think that's one failure that we can see of at least of recent times. And I can understand it because, you can't bring an American company into Canada because they're just not going to accept it like that. And that comes from personal experience.
Yeah.
You can't oust an area like Tim Hortons that, sponsors the Canadians.
Yeah, and that also has to do a lot with culture.
Yeah.
The culture of the two companies. Now, Tim Horton bought out the Burger King, right? I believe he bought out Burger King, and they also moved the corporate office to Brazil.
Yeah, I heard they're also going after Dunkin' Donuts, probably.
Yeah, maybe. So a lot of the times, even when you're trying to buy a company, especially internationally, if you're there's many times there's many good examples of failures, but there's also a lot of good examples of success. So but I think it fails more, and because they don't do their due diligence, they don't do their proper research, a lot of times it fails. All right, so back to the spiel. All right, so sunken cost fallacy. Belief managers that invest in a failed acquisition must continue because significant amounts have already been invested. And this is like one of the biggest ego trips of any large corporation or government is very, very guilty of this also. For example, in Los Angeles and San Francisco, the state keeps throwing billions and billions and billions of dollars at this problem. And they still can't solve it. And not even solving it, they're not even helping. What they're doing is these large corporate developers are getting these contracts and they're giving them millions and millions of dollars, but yet they put so many restrictions on them that they can't even start building these places for homeless people. And even if they do build these places for homeless people, a lot of the homeless people don't want to live in them. So they keep throwing these billions of dollars at these problems, and they keep saying, well, we got to solve it. We've already spent 3 billion. Let's add another billion to it. And that's exactly what the bullet train from LA to San Francisco. They've thrown billions and billions of dollars at it already. And they say, well, we got too much money into it to let it fail. So let's just keep throwing more money at it and keep throwing more money at it and buying up all of these properties so we can have these clear train tracks and we can have all this stuff to get ready to start building it. And they just keep throwing money in at it and it's not going anywhere. And that is the egos of the politicians saying, I'm not going to give up on this. We've spent billions of dollars. It's just never going away. All right. You guys want to add anything on that?
I take it you're not a fan of Jerry Brown.
Yeah, I know. So, but the thing about it is each governor keeps taking up the project. They don't kill it. They don't do anything. They said, well, we already spent this much money because the committees are saying, hey, we spent this much money. We got to continue doing it. It's a great idea. Everybody's going to write it. We're going to make back our money in 5,000 years or whatever, however long it's going to take.
That is during that project, I was stationed up towards San Luis Obispo at the Air Force Base. And a lot of the farmers within that area had a large concern about that bullet train going through it because they need a certain radius around that area from where they were building it. So they were buying up the farmland, and they instructed eminent domain over their farm as well.
That's one way of paying for premium land at a cheap price. And governments do that all the time. And California is the worst. All right, so imitation managers sometimes feel pressure to diversify their corporations when a competitor diversifies. Like I showed you, the Unilever and the Nestle's. So, they have a lot of different food products. They have a lot of different household products. So they feel pressured to diversify into maybe cleaning products or whatever it is, because the competition is doing it and they don't want to lose any market share. So many times they're caught off guard, might quickly look for a similar acquisition, don't do their due diligence, and it doesn't work out too well. So these are the large corporation, Mondelez. I have a friend who works there. She always gives me Oreos. She's such a nice person. So Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, and as you can see, all of these products have food, drinks, household products, and clothing, some of the basic necessities of life, and they probably own a lot of real estate and housing. Okay, like McDonald's. McDonald's isn't in the business to make hamburgers. They're in the business to obtain land, obtain leases. That's what McDonald's does. They own billions and billions of dollars in land, like Sears does. That's the Sears. The majority holding of Sears now is a bunch of vacant land that they're turning into apartments and condos. All right, so some of the diversification pitfalls: poor governance, incentives. Managers receive compensation. For example, we're going to get into, and when we go to our ethics chapter, about how messed up a company Wells Fargo is because they did that with their managers. They gave them a carrot, dangled it in front of them, and many of the managers did a lot of unethical things. The threat of failure, profit-based rewards. So if you tell a manager, if you fail, you're out of here. So a lot of things can happen when you diversify and start another company, and you're managing all of these people and trying to get them to get this new company up and running and competitive with your competitors. Okay, so poor management. A lot of times they'll take a manager from one division and put them in a completely different division, and they'll absolutely know nothing about the industry. Many times GE is very guilty of doing that, and so are these many other large corporate conglomerates. Okay, so diversification in the growth share matrix units contribute to corporate value creation in two ways. Either they serve as engines of revenue growth, or they generate cash flows for the firm to reinvest and distribute to the shareholders or to the other companies. Executives classify business units as high or low, and each dimension applied as set rules of managing each different quadrant. So a lot of the times, managers will mislabel these or not know exactly how to rate these different types of groups. So what they'll do is, this is from the Boston Consulting Group, the growth share matrix. So you have a question mark, you have a star, a dog, and a cow. So the cash cow is have high share but low growth and can generate large cash flows that can be used to fund growth business. For example, in my industry, Xerox, HP, Samsung, they all make ink for their printers and for their copiers. That is a huge cash cow for these companies. It's so much so that they're actually suing a lot of these remanufacturing companies that are remanufacturing their toners and reselling them. So an ink cartridge or a toner cartridge will cost you $1 to $5, and they sell for anywhere from $30 to $100. So that is a tremendous cash cow. So companies don't invest heavily into cash cows. That's why you don't see Xerox and HP growing, their printer division growing. And what it's actually happening is they're shrinking and consolidating. HP bought out Samsung, Xerox bought out quite a few different companies. So stars combine high share with high growth, and smart managers should invest heavily in these, maintain to improve their position over time. These businesses typically represent the future of the company. You'll see a lot of pharmaceutical companies do this. So they have the R&D, they come up with a great product. These stars are going to make them, billions of dollars, and they do everything they can to promote it and to invest in it. So question marks, as their name implies, truly present a conundrum for a lot of management. They don't know enough about it. They don't know or have the foresight to see what can become of it. Xerox is a perfect example. Look what happened with the PC. How many of you watched those videos that I posted? Anybody? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. So if Xerox would have developed the PC, even though they're ahead of their time, they would be the next Microsoft, Dell, combined, whatever you want to call it. There would be nobody touching them. So if not managed correctly, a significant investment may not move from their star quadrant. Instead, they may move to the dogs. So the dogs have a low share and a low growth and add little profitability to a company's overall portfolio. The general rule is to get rid of the dogs or divest the dogs. But if they were to invest in the Xerox computers, the dogs would grow up to be stars. They would be generating billions and billions of dollars. So that's the problem with the managers. Looking into these, hindsight is 2020. You can't always see the forest through the trees, but that is, something that a good manager learns to develop. And that's something I hope you guys learn to develop by doing all these exercises, is actually being able to look at a company, decide what it needs, and act on it. Okay, so the growth share matrix says almost nothing about whether cash cows, dogs, question marks, or stars help the corporation exploit and expand the company's resources and capabilities. A lot of times management won't take a stand. Look at, in the dramatization of the Xerox, the corporate guys looked at the mouse and said, "What the heck is this? This makes no sense to me whatsoever. Why would I invest money in this? Why would why would we go ahead with this? Let's just sell it to Apple for $1 million in stock swap and be done with it. We're done." No foresight, and that's how a lot of managers are in these companies. They don't want to know what's going on. They can't imagine what this cutting edge technology is going to do. So they have a lot of foresight, or they don't have the foresight. I already did this one. Okay, so greenfield versus acquisitions. So the type of companies, for example, Apple acquired the technology and everything for the GUI from Xerox and ran with it. So there's a lot of good things, a lot of bad things. This particular chart is in your book, so I'm not going to go over it word by word. Okay. So acquisitions represent an opportunity to create and destroy value for the firm. In 2019, over 50,000 mergers, valued at over $980 billion. But most mergers failed to create value for the shareholders, which meant they weren't very profitable. They didn't do exactly what the company wanted them to do, and the estimates vary, but between 70 and 90% of the mergers didn't work out very well. Before searching for a firm to purchase, you need to do your due diligence. You need to know if it's going to create value for the company. And as future managers, you guys need to know this type of thing. When your boss says, "Hey, we're thinking about buying this company, what do you think?" And you'll be in a position where you'll know a little bit more than the average person, and you can actually give them some real good ideas. So in my business, I purchased 4 different types of companies. Accutech was a direct competitor of mine. I wanted their customer base. I wanted because they were very, very close to me. I also wanted all the phone numbers and names of their customers. Their web presence, they never really built up a web presence, but I took that over and took their web presence and made it mine. But one of the other things that I wanted was they were a service center for Xerox. I was a dealer for Xerox, but I could only sell the machines. They were a service center, so I wanted that. So that added value to my company where I could actually service the Xerox machine. We were servicing them before, but now we're just authorized service center. We sell many of the remanufactured cartridges, toner cartridges, which are third party. You get a OEM, which is original equipment manufacturer of an HP toner. You replace the parts, you clean it, you can resell it for about half of what HP sold it for, and still make a 40%, 30% margin. So this company called Cractronics, we bought them out to do that. But not only did we get their remanufactured customers, but we were able to get the technology and everything to make the remanufactured toners. We got their customer base. So not only did we keep selling them remanufactured toners, but we sold them new equipment. We sold them Xerox equipment. We sold them Canon and Brother and other types of equipment. So that was something that generated a lot of revenue for us. That worked out to be very, very good. CCS was a dealer, not direct competitor. We wanted to get the authorized Canon status from them. That's what we ended up doing. Cost us a little bit more than what we wanted to pay, but we ended up doing it anyway. And then Lucent Imaging, because we were making remanufactured cartridges, we also wanted to sell those not just to our customers, but we wanted to sell them to other dealers, which would be our competitors. But we could sell them and to other, so we have a larger market. So we get the wholesale and distribution and the customer list for all of that. So most of those were very, very profitable. Some we just broke even with, but it did bring value to our company. And so that's one of the good reasons why we did that. And yes, I did my due diligence, had the accountants in on it and the lawyers. Cost a lot of money, but I didn't want to do something that was going to cost me even more money. So acquirers must pay a premium to acquire a target, which represents a bet by the acquirer. And if it's making a lot of money, the company Accutech, I ended up paying a lot of money for it, but it paid off in the long run. but you have to do your due diligence. I had to talk him down 3 or 4 different times, saying, hey, I can just go take your customers anyway because I know the area and I know what's going on. So what I really wanted was that Xerox service contract. So, and he didn't know that. He just kind of figured I just wanted his customers. So if he hadn't known that, he probably could have held out for a little bit more money. So acquisition premium creates 2 challenges for the acquiring firm. First, the larger the premium, the more value they must actually create to justify the acquisition, which is talking about the Xerox Service Center. Second, given the time value of money, the larger the premium, the quicker the acquired must create the value. So the quicker I can get my money back on my investment, the better off we are. All right. Takeover, another term where the acquiring firm breaks up the target firm and weaves its individual elements, product lines, employees, manufacturing facilities into fabricating with the acquired firm. The target brand, culture, and identity all disappear. This is what Apple does to many of its acquisitions. Siri was a company. Most people don't know that, and they took it over and disassembled it, took all the technology, got rid of the people and everything. They just pretty much just wiped it clean, and then acclimated the Siri technology into their phone, and that's where we get Siri from today. All right, so Apple's acquisition of more than 40 startup firms have followed this pattern, including Next, eMagic, Siri, the personal digital assistant. The target firms ceases to exist as Apple assimilates and disperses the value elements of the firm through the existing organization. So many times what will happen, and this is going to be, I want you guys to understand this. If you work for a company that's been bought out by another company, the first to go is accountants. You know why? They're duplicated. The accountants are duplicated and they don't generate revenue. The last to go are the salespeople because they do generate revenue. So accountants will go first right away. HR will go within a few months. Operations, I did business with a remanufacturing company. I didn't mention this. So eventually we stopped doing remanufacturing toner cartridges because we could not beat the economies of scale that some of these large companies had. So a cartridge that cost them $5 to make cost us $10, and we could actually buy the cartridge for $10 or less. So we end up doing away with that. So a lot of these companies, yes, toners are very expensive. So we got away from that. All right. And let's go back. Oh. So the point I was making is if you're in a company that's doing a merger, as soon as you find out the merger, and if you're in accounting or one of those duplicated departments, start looking for a job because you're not going to be around for long. If you're even in sales, when you generate revenue, a lot of the times, if your numbers are not good, they're going to get rid of you. So when they downsize. But the remanufacturing company I was talking about, they got rid of the accounting people right away. The operations of it, they had 2 operation plants. The company that they bought had an operation plant in where was it? Chatsworth, and one in Mexico. And the company that bought them had an operation plant in Philadelphia. So what they ended up doing was increasing the size of the plant in Mexico and closing both the United States plants down. I mean, it's, as far as saving money, it's a good business move. But both those plants in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania is where it was, not Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Chatsworth. There's about 300 jobs that were lost. So, or moved out of the country. So that's one of the things you got to be very, very much aware of. And if you're in an industry that it is prevalent for them to consolidate, be very aware. All right, that's your life lesson for today. All right, back to the grind. So build or merge an acquisition with the goal of creating a new firm from the components of 2 pre-existing firms. It gives you a new identity and it merges. So Daimler Benz, which is Mercedes-Benz, and Chrysler merged, and the new company was called Daimler Chrysler AG. They exchanged technology, exchanged parts, increase of global customers. This is before Mercedes had an SUV version. That's what they basically used Chrysler for. They took their models. I bought a Jeep, what was it, 2013 Jeep, and Daimler-Benz put most of their parts in it. So basically my Jeep was a Mercedes-Benz. So my taillight went out and it cost me $300 to replace it. It was ridiculous, which normally with a Chrysler, it would cost you maybe $50, $75. So that's an advantage and disadvantage of sometimes that happening for the end user. So integration means the degree to which the two companies share facilities, operating procedures, compensation systems, organizational structure, and even cultural norms. So a lot of times the biggest things with acquisitions is the culture doesn't mesh very well. So sometimes an acquiring firm will need to tighten integration, the acquired firm in its own organization, but other strategies require the two firms to operate relatively or completely separate. So if the culture is too different, if what they're doing is too different, they'll keep the two firms completely separate. They'll share maybe some resources, maybe a little bit of financing, maybe a little technology, but in the most part, because the people are not going to get along very well, they're not going to put them together. Okay. If you ever do work for a company that's going to go through a merger or an acquisition, get on the integration team if you possibly can. That way you'll actually have a say of what's going on. Management might not listen to you, but but you might have some say. So this is also in your book. So this will tell you all there is to know about separating brand and identity, acquire, maintain loss targets, and all that other good stuff. The most successful integration teams are jointly led by high-profile executives from both the acquiring and acquired firm. The credibility and authority of these teams helps break down barriers to change integration in both companies. So like I said, if you work for a company that's going to go through this, try and get on the team that's going to do this. So basically each department is going to have a team of their own to try and work things together so they can do the acquisitions closer and closer together and make it a better transition. All right. Any questions about what we talked about so far? All right. So this didn't work this morning. Let's see if it works today. All right. Can you read this?
You have to stop sharing and share again.
Oh, do I have to do that?
That's a negative.
All right, let's try that. Okay. All right. How's that better?
Gotcha, boss.
All right. So what happened is in 1993, Cisco Systems started buying up companies. They have spent literally billions and billions of dollars buying up all of these companies. And I think there's something like 200 total, over 200 total. So all the way, these are all the different countries and the prices they paid for them. And as you can see, when you start getting into the 2000s, they stopped sharing the price of how much they paid. 2.9 times 10 to the 9th power. All right. Somebody have a calculator quickly. 2.7 times 10 to the 9th power. So billions and billions of dollars. So these are all the different companies they have integrated, and they have done very, very successful. They're one of the few companies that's been able to do this successfully and able to grow doing it and creating value. Little red spinning arrow of death. All right, so finally we get to diversification, the next phase. So what is the next phase of diversification? He who controls all the gold makes the rules. So money is the next diversification. So out of the top, oh, here it is. So out of the top 4 profitable companies that you can get into, tobacco being number 1, but those customers keep dying for some reason. I don't understand it. But you got banks, financial services, and investments. So those are the reasons why these large companies are getting into financial services. And another reason why is because they don't have to pay Google and Apple a fee to process their money. Every time you do a transaction, every time Uber pays their Uber driver, or every time the driver pays or the passenger pays the driver, they pay with a credit card, they pay with Google, they pay with Apple. They get charged a fee for that. So every time, so that adds up to millions and millions of dollars. So why pay millions and millions of dollars to Apple and Google when you can do it yourself and make money yourself? And you can start another company and do it that way. So like I said, so that is some of the highest profit margins is the banking industry in controlling the money. So now it's your turn to participate. What kind of business strategy is Facebook doing with Libra, with doing a digital currency? So what is Facebook going to get out of this? Go ahead, Brandon. You guys all fall asleep?
Hey, boss, I'll just weigh in my opinion because nobody else is. When it comes to digital commodities and everything else, I invest in cryptocurrencies and everything. Basically, what they do is they make transactions. Basically, made on what is it? Not ETFs, but currency trading across countries.
Okay.
So, like when you look at like Bitcoin or anything, it's commoditable currency. It goes across very fluidly. Facebook can do the same thing along with their ads, everything else. If they create a digital currency, it just makes it easier for the money to transact between different nations. And everybody knows Facebook is worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things that Facebook can do by creating their own currency. One, they control all the money. So 2, so by creating their own currency, they can trade the currency without tracking it, right, from country to country. They don't have to convert it. They don't have to do anything. They can just, transfer it. So unlike Bitcoin, also Facebook actually has the stock and has assets to back up the currency. For many, many years, the United States currency was backed up by gold. That's no longer true, but the currency here in the United States actually has value because of the economic status of our country. So when other countries want to use our currency, they know that we're not going to go bankrupt. They know that we're not going to devaluate the currency. For example, Ecuador uses the US dollar. So, a loaf of bread costs a nickel or a dime, but, they use the US currency for $1 to buy their products. So when Facebook says, hey, we're going to come out with a currency, they're a big enough company and a stable enough company to back that currency up, right? Unlike Bitcoin that has nothing based on the value. Even though it went up to $35,000 for a coin, it was based on absolutely nothing than the trading value. All right. So
Yeah,
Uber, go ahead.
Yeah, look at it as well. What is it? They eliminate the Forex, the foreign exchange rate as well, don't they?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. so they can just transfer money as opposed to exchanging it. And that's also he who controls all the gold controls all the rules, right? He or makes the rules. So not
Yeah,
only
that's the
so
same. I've been trying to buy what is it, a Tampa Bay Tom Brady jersey for my dad who lives up in Canada. We used to live in Boston. So it was, big Tom Brady fan and everything else. Every time I try to buy this stupid jersey on NFL.ca, whatever it is,
yeah.
the exchange rate doesn't go through on the ATC or ATH transfers. So they end up refunding me the money, and then guess what? No product in the end.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge marketing scheme or marketing mastermind by Facebook. If you can buy something from a different country in one country and get it automatically shipped without having to pay all the tariffs, fees, and everything else, that's amazing.
A lot of that has to probably do with the bank that you're using with the credit card or the bank card. They probably don't convert it for you in that way. They're probably not working with the company. So you might want to use if you have a different bank card, use a different bank card.
Yeah, the ACH transfers when it comes to different countries are pretty specific. So
yeah, call your bank and tell them what you're doing and see if they'll work with you.
Gotcha.
All right, so Uber, what they're trying to do is eliminating a lot of the fees, right? So the fee for the customer paying the Uber driver, the fee for Uber paying the Uber driver. So because everything's electronically transferred. So instead of paying somebody else fees to do that, they can save millions and millions of dollars doing it in-house. So what will Facebook be able to accomplish with having cryptocurrency? Facebook's going to be able to do the same thing that they've been doing all along. Collect all your information, control where you buy, what you buy, how you think, and everything. So Facebook wants total control, including your wallet. That's just my opinion. All right, what do you learn? What did you learn today? So this is another company called Newell Brands. These are all the different products that they sell. And let's see what's new, what's due. Southwest is due this morning, so you should already turn that in. Midterm will be due on Friday of next week. And then Nike will be due shortly. And this is the little progression of Nike's logo. This logo right here in 1972 was made by Bill Knight's secretary. She did it for the cost of one prom dress, or winter formal dress, I believe it was. I think it was a couple of $100. That's what he paid her to design the logo. All right, a little bit of trivia for you. So let's beg on Facebook for a while. Go ahead. That was an expensive dress back then, yes. Everything's still due on Monday. Every Monday you have something due. What, you think I'm going to give up on that? What's wrong with you, Avi? All right. So Facebook is pretty much a monopoly. You will have all 3 days to do it. I'm going to give it to you, and you'll have 3 days to do it and then turn it in. You're welcome.
Professor, today you're going to post the question for the midterm, or is that going to be next?
I'm going to post this class and the slides tonight, right after class usually.
Okay, are you going to post all 3 questions, or are you going to release the actual question that you're going to?
Nope,
review?
I'm going to wait and surprise you on that one.
Gotcha.
You guys don't like surprises?
Nobody likes surprises. I hate when they're late.
Well, I had a couple of students do all 3 questions last quarter. And then I said, why would you do all that work? Like it literally is designed for an hour-and-a-half class, those questions. So you should be able to do them in 2 hours, a very good job at it. So. Any other questions, concerns? All right, well, I'm going to stick around for a little bit. So if anybody has any questions, If not, get out of here. Have a good evening, and I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend, everyone.
So what was the trivia, Professor?
Oh, the trivia was the Nike thing with the secretary. That was your Nike trivia. And did I show you my first pair of shoes? I did that on Monday.
Yeah, they look like shape-ups. Those?
They actually came back with a retro version of those.
No,
I
I see.
can buy them now.
Look, Cortez's.
I had to work like a month to go buy those because my parents wouldn't buy them for me. I was very upset. So I worked and I bought them.
Actually, Professor, I did have a question. What is an example of a stepping stone, like a real world example of that?
Good question. Let's go back and review.